Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Learning Community for Family Leaders. Let's go ahead and get started today. During today's call, as is mentioned in the chat box, everyone's phone lines will be muted to avoid background noise. On the right side of your screen is a chat box. This chat box will be very important for today's call since we will be asking all of you to share ideas and strategies about family engagement. If you have a question during today's call, simply type it into the chat box, and one of us that are presenting today will respond as soon as possible. My name is Melissa Pearson, and I am one of the project coordinators with FREDLA. I'm a parent of 2 children with behavioral health needs and have worked in the field of family-run organizations for over 15 years. Thank you all for joining us for today's important call. We also would like to thank SAMHSA and the National Technical Assistance Center for funding the Learning Community for Family Leaders and for supporting FREDLA, a core partner in the TA network, to facilitate this important peer-to-peer learning opportunity. This learning community was created as a vehicle for family leaders to share ideas, engage in peer learning, disseminate resources, and form a network of colleagues for ongoing support. And we will be engaging in all of these activities during today's call. As I mentioned, FREDLA is a core partner of the TA network. FREDLA's mission is to strengthen the leadership and organizational capacity of family-run organizations. As such, if any of you on the call today are in need of resources, support, or technical assistance, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. We are always here to support all of you and the incredible work that you do each and every day. The focus for today's call is family engagement and how your family organization engages families. We will be using polling questions and interactive discussion and exchange of ideas as a way to learn from all of you about the innumerable and creative strategies that family organizations have created to engage families and then keep them engaged. So let's dive right in. Let's first look at what is family engagement. And I'm sure all of you on the phone have seen dozens of different definitions for family engagement. But for the purposes of today's call, this seemed like a nice place for us to start. So this definition, any role or activity that enables families to have direct and meaningful input into and influence on systems, policies, programs, or practices affecting services for children and families. Now let's pull this definition apart just a little. The first piece is around what you or your organization does to enable families to become engaged. The second piece of this definition focuses on the direct and meaningful input and influence the family will have as a result of you and your organization engaging them. Now let's look at the difference between engagement and involvement. While engagement is often used synonymously with involvement, there is a difference between the two. Engagement is about motivating and empowering families related to their own strengths and needs in order for them to play an active role in making things better for their own child and family. Engagement is what keeps families working through the slowness of change. As you can see, engagement is different than involvement. Engagement focuses more on the child and family change process, while involvement focuses more on the influence and input that will bring about positive change for all children and families. There's been a lot of work done in the arena of family engagement, and more than a few organizations have developed principles or best practice guidelines around family engagement. As you can see on the slide, we've listed several of these organizations who have developed practice principles or best practice guidelines around family engagement. And we will have a list of resources and websites available for you to download at the conclusion of today's call. The important thing to remember is this. If you want families to engage, you must first remove the barriers that are causing them not to engage. You must listen to these families and let them lead you. So now it's time for our first poll question. So we're asking all of you, how do families find out about your family-run organization? And in the box there, we'd like you to type in your response about how families find out about you and your organization and what you have to offer. We'll give folks just a few minutes to type in your responses. Okay, we've got some answers starting to come in. Word of mouth, Facebook, website, those are wonderful, wonderful ways. In today's world, the internet is a definite source of connection for getting information out to families. Referrals, okay, community events, flyers, information being shared directly by the providers working with families. Absolutely. Those relationships with those providers can be a very, very important vehicle to reaching families and getting information about your organization out there. Referrals from schools, absolutely. Doctors, community agencies. All right, we've got wonderful responses coming in. Hosting programs that build skills. Yes, families are often engaged by opportunities to learn more about their children, their needs, how they can best support them. That's another great one. All right. Let's move on now. In follow-up to this poll question, we'd like to have you guys use the chat box and tell us about how does your organization do outreach to families that may not know about your program. So we're talking about those families that they've maybe never heard of a family-run organization. They've maybe never known about that parent peer support is available through an organization. So what types of activities do you use to do outreach to reach these families so that they know about you and your organization and what you have to offer? So if folks could type responses into the chat box and give some specifics about some of the responses you gave in the poll. Give folks a few minutes to type that information in. While you're doing that, I'll share an example of one of the ways we did outreach for families to know about the family organization and what it had to offer. And that was to connect with kindergarten roundup events. And those were wonderful opportunities to engage with families with young children as they begin to enter the educational system. As many of you know, our kids with mental health and behavioral health needs can oftentimes struggle at school, and so we thought it was a very wonderful way to get the information to families of young children starting school so that if they did begin to struggle or have difficulties in the educational arena, that they knew that the family organization was available and how it could help them and how it could help them navigate the school system. So that's an example of, we've got some really good examples coming in on the chat box as well. Working with providers to share resources and set up tables at various events to provide information. Social media. Social media can be an incredible vehicle to get information out quickly and efficiently to a lot of families. Health fairs, community gatherings in target communities, PTA meetings. PTA meetings can be a great place. Powwows, another wonderful way to engage with families from diverse cultures and connect with families. Working with state agency and providers. Absolutely. Building those relationships with those providers can lead to a lot of really good opportunities to engage families. Faith community. That's a great great opportunity, connecting with your faith-based community and letting them know that you're there so that they can let families know who come into churches and spiritual centers that you're a resource and what you have to offer. System of care presentations to law enforcement. Oh, that's wonderful. And often emergency service providers. It's another really good information. All right. Thank you all for sharing all of those wonderful, wonderful ways that you are doing outreach to connect with families. Much of the research about best practices for family engagement speaks to the different ways of making families feel welcome. And so we would like to know from all of you, what kinds of things are you and your organization doing to make families feel welcome? So as you're getting information to families about your family-run organization and what you have to offer them, what kinds of things do you do so that when you have that first connection with families or when they first, reach out to your organization, that they feel welcome? So again, using the chat box, share some strategies that you guys have found effective in making families feel welcome. Let's give folks just a minute to empathy and suspending judgment. Those are really good ones. Sending them text or emails for follow-up meeting and community events. Sharing your background and experiences to relate to them. Sharing your story. Making sure families feel valued for their time and contributions. Becoming a mentor if needed or desired. Offering food, cookies, water. One of the things that we did that was very, very important when engaging families and making them feel welcome was to offer on-site child care whenever we had a training or a support group or an event for families. And so we went so far as to partner with a local residential service provider to have trained, qualified staff members on site at our events so that not only did families know we recognized that child care could be a barrier, and not only did we recognize that the cost of having child care for their children was a barrier, but we also recognized that sometimes providing child care for a child or a youth with a mental health or behavioral health challenge can be difficult and sometimes requires a child care provider that has a higher level of skill set and qualifications for families to feel comfortable having their children be in a child care setting. So we made sure that we had that available at all times, and that was really important for the families that we worked with, that they could bring their children with them, that there were qualified, competent child care providers on site that could manage the kinds of things that might come up during those events and meetings. We've got providing cab rides and transportation. It's another really good one. Being a great listener and putting yourself in families' shoes. Serving dinner, making sure all meetings, dinner and child care at our events, meetings are free. Having other family members present, absolutely. Got some really, really great ideas coming in. So thank you for sharing, and feel free to keep sharing. We facilitate a support group for families by families with child care. Again, that for families by families can make such a huge difference for making families feel welcome and understood. So let's now move on to our second poll question. And this question is about diverse cultures, and outreach to diverse cultures is critical to family engagement. Which of these strategies does your organization use to engage diverse families? And you can select more than one. You can select all of these if they apply to you and your organization. So we'll give folks a minute to respond and indicate which of these they do. The first is around staff matching the cultural makeup of families they support, having materials available in multiple languages, and partnering with cultural centers to hold events for families. Okay, looks like got a lot of folks responding. 70% are indicating that they have staff that match the cultural makeup of the families they support. That's incredibly important and so positive to see. 80% partnering with cultural centers to hold events for families. And looks like 60% are indicating they make materials available in multiple languages. Those are all really, really positive things to do to engage families with diverse cultures. So let's take a minute and move on to a little bit deeper into this subject around engaging families from diverse cultures, and talk to us a little bit specifically about how you do that. What kinds of things, when you partner with cultural centers, what does that look like? What kinds of events do you hold? What kinds of, what kinds of activities do you do to ensure that your staff match the makeup of the families that they support? So use the chat box, and we're very, very interested to see your guys' responses about how you're doing this. It looks like that many of you on the phone are really doing a lot of things to engage families from diverse cultures based on the poll results. We have staff reflecting makeup of community, although it's hard. Absolutely, it is hard. It's definitely an area that really requires a lot of intentionality around recruitment and hiring practices, and it has to be kind of an ongoing effort that organizations make. Attending cultural competency trainings, absolutely. Continuing to educate and inform yourself and to ensure that your staff have information so that they can be culturally respectful and responsive to the families that they serve. I think it's how you present yourself as a whole. One of the responses. Spend time discussing the different terminology and talk about our common values. That's a great strategy. Respecting their culture and not being judgmental. Another response, contacting our system of care cultural linguistic staff to obtain information about different cultures, and have moved into the area and trained the staff and volunteers. Wonderful. Absolutely. There are so many ways of ensuring that the staff have the skills and information and background they need to be culturally responsive. And then also, really engaging in the communities where there are families from diverse cultures and identifying strategies for how you can partner with them. We've got another one, advisory board comprised of members of diverse cultures. That's a great idea, to build an advisory board that can help inform how your organization can be more responsive to families of diverse cultures. We had partnered, when we were doing this work in the community, we partnered with a Latino community center, and we held events in partnership with them, both to celebrate Latino holidays and cultural dates, but we also made a point to, when we held an event or we did a training, it was informed by the community center staff, and it was delivered in partnership with the community center staff, because that was a place where they offered health care, they offered counseling, they offered, free lunches, they offered child care. So that was a place where the Latino community went frequently for their needs as families and from the community. And so it was really important for us to partner with the staff of that community center when we held events, because there was it increased the level of credibility around the activities that we were doing and demonstrated that we were willing to, put the time and energy and effort into partnering and collaborating and building those relationships in the community to engage families from those Latino families. Go where diverse events are held. Absolutely. You have to be willing to leave your office and leave your space and really get out into the community to engage families. Build relations and partnerships with diverse serving agencies. Absolutely. Look to see if you have stakeholders and system partners in your communities that specifically serve, refugee families or, families who are resettling in your community or, like we did, partner with a community center that is specifically, a space where families from diverse cultures go for services and support. And really reach out to them, let them know who you are, what you do, how you support families, what you have to offer, so that, again, just as earlier when we talked about the faith-based option, they can share that information with the families that they encounter, and they can help spread that message for you to ensure that families know that you're there so they can reach out and connect to you when they need to. Ask families you work with sometimes. They are more than happy to share their culture to you. Absolutely. We found that to be very true, Stephanie, that families are more than happy to teach you about their culture and many other things. It's, as I said earlier, we really just have to listen and let them lead us through this process. All right, well, let's move on to our final poll question, where we'd like to know how many of your organizations use the following activities and or incentives to help engage families. And so we've just listed a handful of different activities and or incentives, newsletters, conferences, holiday parties, back-to-school events, and stipends for families who serve on committees or work groups. So give folks just a minute to weigh in on these and see what kinds of activities and incentives off this list you guys are using for engagement. Looks like a lot of you use conferences and newsletters as a way to engage families. 92% are indicating they use conferences to engage families. That's wonderful. Almost 70% of you are using newsletters, and 61% holiday parties and stipends, and 46% with back-to-school events. All right. Wonderful. Well, let's, again, talk a little bit about, a little further about activities and incentives that you use with families, and ask you, when you use things like a conference or a newsletter or a back-to-school event, what does that look like? How do you utilize those kinds of activities or incentives with families, and how do those activities and incentives help families engage and make them more interested in engaging? And type your responses in the chat box again. We'll give folks a few minutes to share some examples of the activities and incentives they're using. We definitely found that one of the big pieces was, a lot of people know that, it's important to offer food and beverage and things when you have events as a, kind of incentive for families. But we really found that, part of it is about, recognizing that a lot of families work during the day, and if you're holding meetings, in the evening time, offering a meal for the family and their kids can be a very, very important strategy around getting families to attend. You know, you don't want to put families in a position where they have to choose, you know, I go to this event or I go home and make a meal for my family. And so, you know, for them to come, they need to make sure that they know that their family will have a meal available to them to participate. And so the other thing that we learned was that meal, that food, those options really needed to be informed by the families we were supporting, because many of them weren't, you know, they weren't necessarily wanting to just have potato chips and pizza every time they came. They really wanted their children to have a meal. And so we started a routine through a lot of our support groups where we used kind of a bring a dish to pass kind of approach. And so the end of each group, everyone kind of identified who was going to bring what. And so that was kind of how they set their meal plan or their meal agenda for each subsequent meeting. And that was a really, really valuable, you know, way to ensure that those families felt good about coming and knowing that they and their children were going to get a good meal out of that, participating in an event. We've got some interesting responses coming in. Traditional life cycle presentation, talk about traditional role models within the family, what traditional activities may be applied in their mental health care. Free Thanksgiving dinner and free trainings. Annual picnics during the evening with dinner and child care. We did an annual picnic. Those can be a lot of fun and a great opportunity for families to get out with their children and do those kinds of normal social outings and that oftentimes they may avoid because of their children's behavior. And we found that those were great opportunities for families to come together with families that had similar situations and feel comfortable that even if there was a challenge with their child, that everybody was going to understand that that was just maybe part of the deal. And there was not that there would be a lack of judgment, and that was really important for families. Respite coordinator is good about having picnics, holiday parties, craft nights, monthly activities, picnics and barbecues in the summer. Great place for parents to network. Care managers drop by as well. That's wonderful. Yeah, if you can engage your community providers in those kind of social recreational opportunities along with families, what a great opportunity for families and providers to see each other in a different venue and in a different context. Culture nights, weekly council gatherings for youth and elders. We have a youth move component along with the meetings, so as to include all ages. Evening meetings are held in a central location, meals served in a breakout room for youth and a separate child care area for under 13. Community members are presenters. That's wonderful. Looks like that's kind of covering the whole gamut of, supporting the whole family across all age spans and supporting them to participate. Cultural and traditional activities to build relationships and networking opportunities. And the last one, getting families involved in system meetings so they get a chance to contribute input. Absolutely. Absolutely. A lot of times in a lot of communities, we see stipends or gift cards being used. We absolutely identified, as another example, we had for youth and for families who served on committees or work groups or decision-making bodies, kind of a stipend process of what activities, we stipend families and youth, and based on how much time they contributed, determined the amount of the stipend. And including when we would take families to conferences and to meetings, out of town, we would compensate them for their time through stipends as well. So we really tried to ensure that, when families and professionals are serving on the same, governance structure or decision-making body, those professionals are there typically during their work time, and so they're being compensated to sit at that table. And so we felt it was really, really important to use stipends to demonstrate the value and expertise that those families were bringing to the table and compensate them for that expertise and those contributions that they brought. All right. Now we want to move to kind of the next phase of engagement. And we like to invite you to share your strategies around kind of sustainability of engagement. There's a lot of literature about best practices for engaging families, and family organizations have been successfully engaging families for decades. The more challenging component to family engagement can sometimes be sustaining that family engagement. And so we'd like to invite all of you to share your strategies and your tips that you've developed over the years for keeping families engaged. And again, use the chat box as a way to communicate those. But I think sometimes we get families engaged, but it's really about once they're engaged, how do you keep them engaged, and how do you create a continuum of opportunities for those families to sustain engagement. So we'll give folks a few minutes just to share their thoughts. Okay. Utilizing seasoned families as mentors for new families. Absolutely. That's a great idea. Staying in touch with the family, calling once per month or as needed. Maintaining that connection and communication. Parent and youth advisory boards that meet on a quarterly basis. Asking families about topics of interest that they would like to have the opportunity to discuss. So letting them help inform kind of the agenda and the topics and focus meetings. Invite specific individuals to share their story at a gathering so others may identify their needs and hopefully buy in to integrate traditional care with contemporary approaches. That's a great strategy. Callbacks, emails, letters, just a simple hello goes a long way. You're so right. Showing families how their feedback and ideas are making a difference. It's so important to have that kind of feedback loop for families so that they can see that their input and their expertise and their contributions are making a difference, not only for their child and family, but for the rest of the community. And so sometimes you can do that by helping them see, using the evaluation data out of system of care communities, demonstrating how their stories and their experiences have been communicated to the system partners and the changes that system partners have made related to what services and supports are available, but really helping them see how their voice makes an impact goes a long way in keeping them invested. Designating parents and youth to serve on committees and boards, providing a series of trainings and workshops that are suggested for families. Families are encouraged to attend local meetings via social media and one-to-one phone calls. Absolutely. So important to reach out, and social media and texting and the internet is a really great way to communicate, but there's also something to be said for that personal kind of human connection, and we found that the more we could really engage with families in a personal level where it was really personalized for them, that was really important for them. They really, really appreciated that. I have a drawer of greeting cards and send them out when I feel a family could use the connection. That is wonderful. I know in some communities they've used sending out graduation cards to all the families who have youth that are graduating that year, or all the youth who have come through, their youth program or whatever. So those can be really, really valuable things for a family, especially if they haven't been connected in a few months or whatever, and they receive that graduation, congratulations card. That can feel really good to them to know that you and your organization are still working to engage them and are still caring about what's happening in their family. Hosting trainings and workshops facilitated by parents and youth. Personal invite with a phone call or a note, absolutely. Offering educational classes as well as connecting them to support groups. Keep connected via email and phone contact. My goal is to touch base with active families once per month minimally. Good strategies. Families are engaged to participate in semi-annual survey, and the results are offered to the managing entities in the system of care. Again, a great way that families can use their experiences to impact services and supports and policies, and then you can, complete that feedback loop and show them how that data made a difference in the community and with the system partners that your community is working with. Wonderful. Thank you all so much for sharing such valuable information and insight into family engagement. I think it's very clear that those of you on the call are working very hard to engage families and to ensure that they feel welcome and they feel heard and valued. This is a really important area when working towards the development of family involvement and family leadership. It is one of the first pieces that is required to be able to move families along that continuum towards family involvement and ultimately towards family leadership. To support the broader field in this area of family engagement, because this is such an important issue, not just for family-run organizations, but also for our system partners and for the communities about how to engage our families and how to benefit from the voice and experience of families raising children with mental health challenges. FREDLA is going to be developing a tip sheet around the topic of family engagement. And so a lot of the information that you've shared today will help inform that tip sheet and really help us be able to develop a tool that we can share not only with family leaders and family-run organizations such as yourself, but also that you will be able to then take back, share with your stakeholders, share with your system partners, and share with your broader systems of care about how to use strategies such as the ones you guys have outlined to better engage families. Before we leave today, we want to just share with you a couple of things that we're very excited about. And that first piece is 2 new curricula that FREDLA has developed around mid-level managers and the board of directors for family-run organizations. Both of these curricula were released a few weeks ago, but are currently being retooled due to some viewing glitches on our website. So we wanted to let you know about these curricula, but we also wanted to let you know that currently they're being retooled so that people can take full advantage of those resources and opportunities to use those. So we want you to kind of check back with the FREDLA website because we expect that those curricula will be available in the next couple of weeks. And we'll be back on the website, retooled and ready for you to take advantage of. Another resource that FREDLA will be releasing very soon is a tip sheet about assessing the readiness of family members to become parent peer support providers. And some of you on the call may have participated in a learning community call a couple months ago around this topic of assessing readiness. And as a result of that learning community call, we were able to partner with Carol Cecil out of Kentucky and her family-run organization, Kentucky Partnership for Children and Families, and we developed a tip sheet with a lot of really good characteristics, qualifications, and qualities that you can use to better help you identify what families are good folks to begin training and pursuing certification, credentialing, or whatever process you're using in your state to become a parent peer support provider. Lastly, I'm going to turn this over to Millie Sweeney, another FREDLA project coordinator, who is going to share some exciting news with you about the National Data Collection Project that FREDLA is working on.
Thanks, Melissa. This is Millie Sweeney. I am another project coordinator with FREDLA and have been coordinating a project for about 2 years now called the National Data Collection Project. The purpose of that was to bring together family leaders and researchers to take a look at how family-run organizations can collect some common data measurements, common data points, develop a data collection tool that would be easy to use, and even set up a repository where family-run organizations could put this data in. They'd be able to access it, and we would also be able to use it in aggregate form for advocating on behalf of organizations nationally. And as well, you would be able to access that. I am very happy to report that we have the data portal now up and running on our website. We have the participant agreement if you'd like to join the National Data Collection Project. I would love to hear from anyone who wants to learn more about this and who might want to have their organization join and begin entering their data and have a place to put that. You can reach me through FREDLA's website. There is a page for the Data Collection Project, and there is a place to register. That email comes to me, and I will reach out to you individually to ask a few questions to make sure that you meet the criteria for the project. You do not have to be a FREDLA member to be a part of this. We're encouraging all family-run organizations to consider participating so that we have a way to show the impact of family-run organizations, their work with families, their work with policy, nationally. We know anecdotally the impact that we can have, but we want to have some data to show that. So please visit our website. You can also reach me at msweeney@fredla.org. I hope to hear from you.
Thanks, Millie. Appreciate that. And thank you all for joining us today. We have made it available. There are 2 files available for download for folks. One is the resource list of sites and publications around the best practices and guiding principles that I referenced earlier in the call. And the second is the copy of the PowerPoint slides from today. So feel free to download those if you would like. So lastly, I want to remind folks that if you have any feedback about how we can improve the learning community calls or have any interest or need for any support or resources or technical assistance, please feel free to reach out to us. My email is on the screen. We would be happy to hear from you about any of those things. And lastly, we will not be having a learning community for family leaders next month for the month of July, but we will be coming back on August 18th at the same time, 3 p.m. Eastern Time. And our next topic will be family-driven care, what it means across systems. And we will be exploring how family-driven care can be implemented across systems such as child welfare, juvenile justice, substance use, et cetera, and the different ways that communities and child-serving systems have been able to integrate family-driven care within the way that they work with children, youth, and families. And lastly, there's the link on this page if you would like to join the Closed Learning Community Facebook page. Feel free to go on there and request to be added, and I will make sure that you're added. So we really hope that you guys enjoy the rest of your day and have a wonderful summer, and we look forward to talking with all of you again on August 18th.